I am willing to take any questions if anybody has any questions about the TAME PAC.
Can you talk a little bit about how you all got organized and who is funding you?
Sure. We are a group of concerned Ohioans working to educate Ohio's voters about Mary Ellen O'Shaughnessy, and so we have formed the coalition of members for the PAC. There are a bunch of concerned citizen leaders like myself who are involved on various issues and are concerned about this particular election because the Secretary of State is one of the most important elected offices in Ohio. We've been funded the same as any other political action committee is funded by like-minded donors. We've talked with some donors to date, and we'll be talking to more in the next few months. And of course, we'll report all of our contributions and expenditures as required by Ohio law.
Okay, but how did you and Ms. Hayden and Tracy Saliba, I mean, except for the fact that you're all Republican and some of you have ran unsuccessfully for office this year, how did you all come together? And, who brought you all together?
Well, a number of us got together, and there was a core group that had the idea, and then obviously from there we then called other people that we knew were like-minded and had similar concerns about different conservative issues, and so we then made the calls and asked different people to join the board, and that's how we formed the organization. We started with a couple of people, and then we've expanded from there with people who we knew shared our concerns and our beliefs and would be equally interested in these issues and this particular race and Mary Ellen O'Shaughnessy and her weaknesses.
Can you give us any idea who your funding has come from so far, prior to the reporting?
Right now it's just from some like-minded donors, and obviously we're kicking off today, so we're, from this point forward going to be contacting more and expanding our base of both donors and supporters. So right now we're kind of a small group, and we're expanding wider, via the internet and Facebook and Twitter, and through our board of directors, contacting people that they know and expanding from there. So at this point, we're in that phase where we're going to be growing and expanding and getting our message out and adding donors and supporters.
How many supporters and donors do you have at this point?
Actually, I don't have an exact figure on that. Obviously, I read off the board of directors, which is more than half a dozen people, and then there's, I would say, at least 3 times that amount in donors and other people that are involved and active and supporting, and then expanding the PAC and the goals of our PAC.
You said that you're not connected to any of the campaigns of O'Shaughnessy's opponents, but do you personally support Senator Husted for Secretary of State?
I am personally just really interested in this race because I was an Election Day operations coordinator for Muskingum County during the McCain campaign and saw firsthand what was going on there with Acorn coming into the county, and there being a lot of issues that happened, a lot of things that were violations of election law, so that my personal interest really has more to do with the office and the fact that we have to get somebody in that office who's going to uphold our election laws and make sure that every voter who is a legitimate registered voter in Ohio has the right to have their vote counted and make a difference. And so that we need somebody in this very important office who's going to be able to get that done. And I don't believe, and neither does our board, that Mary Ellen O'Shaughnessy is able to do that.
But you can't tell us who you're backing for Secretary of State?
I'm not personally, I don't have any, if your question is, am I in contact with John Husted? I am not. I'm not on, his mailing list. I don't receive his information. But, my concern is focused on Mary Ellen and the fact that she lacks the experience on election law to be able to do this position.
What we saw there, that was pretty long. When you're talking about potentially putting that on television, what are your plans in terms of advertising? Do you plan television, radio, mail, or is it all going to be web-based at this point?
Well, we're going to plan to aggressively get our message out about Mary Ellen to the voters. Starting today, we're using the website, as you saw. We're using social media. I mentioned Twitter and Facebook. We also have the web video that you saw. As we get closer to the election, we'll be utilizing traditional print media, radio, and television to inform Ohio voters. So we'll be raising funds like any other political action committee with the goal to get our message out to the voters and using some traditional media sources as we move closer to the election.
I want to ask a little bit about a couple of the statements in that ad and some things you guys have said today. The career politician argument, John, you say she's been on the ballot, I think, eight times.
8 times for 5 offices.
John Husted's been on the ballot 6 times, and I think he's about 20 years younger than Mary Ellen O'Shaughnessy. When you're making the career politician argument, Aren't both of the main candidates in this race basically career politicians at this point?
Our concern here is Mary Ellen O'Shaughnessy has used her positions to leapfrog to the next position. She's in Columbus City Council, and she uses that office to then run for the United States Congress. And she's in Franklin County City Council, and she uses that position to run for the commissioner. And then she takes the Franklin County Clerk of Courts position. She's there for about a year and decides that while the voters and the taxpayers are paying her for that position, she's going to run for something else. And so, and again, our focus is not on John Husted. You would need to speak with him and his campaign about that, but our focus is on Mary Ellen and getting the truth out about her and the fact that she has been on the ballot 8 times for 5 different positions and is currently in an elected office while running for yet another position.
Why bring out the gun issue in a Secretary of State's race?
It goes to the issue that I raised, that we live in a constitutional republic. So the bottom line is this is not a true democracy where you elect somebody and they have the right to then vote however they feel that they can vote when they're in that office. The Constitution draws the line in the sand. And so the Second Amendment just highlights the fact that she is unwilling to recognize the Constitution as the guiding principle that reserves us, to us as citizens, our God-given rights. So whereas the argument could be made that the Second Amendment issue is not particularly tied to the Secretary of State, clearly as a statewide elected official, her stance that she can disregard the Constitution as an elected official is of concern to us and to the voters of Ohio.
And with the union issue, I have no doubt, I don't doubt the numbers at all, but you talk about it, she's going to come in and I don't understand. As Secretary of State, what could she do that will benefit unions or somehow be a union puppet, as I think somebody mentioned? I mean, I guess I'm not clear on, as a Secretary of State, how does union support change the way that she does her business?
Those are some of the other issues that we've discussed here today, that we saw the influx of Acorn in the last election and the impact that that played on every level of elections. It's really shocking to me when I've done the research, the number of elections that are within less than 1 percentage point. So the chief elections officer and them acting in a nonpartisan way and not beholden to special interests is particularly important to every Ohio citizen and important to this board.
Do you believe the other candidates are not beholden to special interests? I mean, John Husted has taken hundreds of thousands of dollars from charter schools, coal companies, nursing homes. Why is that different?
Again, my focus is on Marion, and our focus as a board is on Mary Ellen O'Shaughnessy and her candidacy, so that our focus has been on, where is her funding coming from? She spent years as an AFL-CIO lobbyist. She's now taken hundreds of thousands of dollars from them. There's a clear, again, her history, her experience, her pattern shows that this is going to be a concern for us and for other Ohio citizens. And so that our focus is not on the Husted campaign. You would need to ask John Husted or his campaign about those issues, because our focus is on Mary Ellen O'Shaughnessy and her candidacy.
Why just focus on her and not him also, if there are some comparable issues or potentially comparable issues there?
Well, like I said, because our goal is to educate the voters about her so they know the truth about her, because this is one of the most important elected officials in Ohio, and we saw with Jennifer Brunner what a hyper-partisan Secretary of State has the power to play partisan games with important decisions that affect elections. And so we're focusing on her, and our concerns are that she, unlike Jennifer Brunner, doesn't even have the election law experience Jennifer Brunner had. Jennifer Brunner had been an election law attorney. She had worked for the Secretary of State, and yet she still went into office and has made partisan decisions that have impacted voting here in Ohio. And here we have someone who has no election law experience at all, no experience in elections, who has been picked for this office specifically for partisan political reasons, and is asking to then be the chief elections officer in Ohio.
I know you're not focusing on Senator Husted, but is he a licensed attorney? Does he have election law experience?
When you look at John Husted, I think a lot of people think that his experience writing Ohio's election laws is very pertinent experience, but again, John Husted is not our focus. TAME PAC was created to illustrate to voters the dangers of electing Mary Ellen O'Shaughnessy. She, again, has no experience overseeing elections, working on Ohio election laws, or anything that would qualify her for the Secretary of State's office.